I have, okay, well, that's the first problem. The second problem is I have a friend who I gave some pictures to, and oh, there he is. This was the first chance I had to meet Bob McIlvaine, and so we were chatting, and I didn't take Vanessa's pictures. This is Vanessa Langer. She was working on the 93rd floor of the World Trade Center, Tower 2, on the morning of September 11, 2001. 5 minutes after the first plane hit Tower 1, Vanessa was on the phone with her uptown office, telling them that in Tower 2 they were being told they were safe, and some people were being told not to evacuate, that if they did evacuate the towers, they would be fired. Vanessa was not told that. She worked for a small company, Regis Business International. They had 7 employees in the towers. 6 of them perished. 1 of them didn't go to work that day. Vanessa was one of under 400 people who was actually found whole and intact on September 24th. The best we can figure is she was killed by debris running. One of the firemen in New York City, shortly after we found her, told me that the area that had been labeled Q10 was between towers 4 and 5, 10 feet from an alley. 10 feet from an alley. You know, I have been at this for over 6 years now, and I am really gratified that you're all here. But I think at each point I need to re-articulate what our mission is, because there are so many of us who have some questions about 9/11. And, you know, I make this joke, and it isn't really a funny joke, but I'm at a point in my life now where I rely on physics professors and architects more than I rely on psychiatrists, doctors, and pet psychics. And that means I'm in a very scary place. Believe me, you don't ever want to be there. 18 minutes between plane 1 hitting Tower 1 and plane 2 hitting Tower 2 is a lifetime in air traffic control. It is a lifetime. My fundamental question about the events of 9/11 are about that 5-minute gap where my daughter sat at a desk and talked to the uptown office. On September 11th, we have a nice round number, 3,000 people. Well, it wasn't 3,000 people. It's 2,743 plus all of the subsequent deaths attributed to either 9/11 grief or 9/11 negligence. We can't count the number of dead since that morning. And each time I do this, I have to tell you, my kid was 10 feet from an alley, 5 minutes late to the rest of her life, and she was 4 or 5 months pregnant at the time. We believed she was 4 months pregnant. And when I finally, in September of 2005, had the courage to go to the medical examiner's office, we were told that, in fact, and he showed me the pictures of the fetal bones, all lined up so nice and neat as if a baby could be constructed with just a little bit of flesh and soul. And it taught me an awful lot about where I live, because she was an absolutely stunning figure in life. And these pictures are 2 different sides of a multifaceted personality. She was every bit as gorgeous and fierce as this picture reveals, even, especially if you're her mother. And she was every bit as wonderful and warm as this one reveals. She was just beginning to come to the one thing in life she ever wanted, a child. And it was amazing to me to discover that, you know, a woman from my generation who, you know, fought and argued for gender equality, raised a daughter whose primary goal in life was to hold her own baby. And the irony of the way that was taken away from her, the irony of that abortion still stuns me. My fundamental question about 9/11 is about those 18 minutes. Do I need to pile on all of the other data that I have learned since that day? Like on September 13th, when George W. Bush stood with a microphone on my daughter's bones, he talked about Iraq. How many deaths can we attribute to 9/11/2001? How many questions can we come up with? I taught writing and rhetoric for 22 years at Syracuse University. My focus was American public discourse. Someday, someone is going to invite me to come and talk for an hour and 20 minutes, and I am going to dramatize for whoever is there exactly what the obstacle is that we are here for today. Because every time I do this, I think, okay, when I did this last, I didn't have Stephen Jones and Richard Gage and a growing number of 9/11 scholars and architects and patriots behind me. So I have a greater group. And I don't want to just keep building groups. This doesn't fix things. The obstacle is in the very, very way America thinks. It thinks at 2 levels simultaneously. Each of us is an individual, and each of us is a part of a collective. I stole this from Sophia. Actually, I will pay her the $1 for the bumper sticker after. But I used to do this exercise all the time with students, and I guess I'm going to ask you just humor me for a minute. What do you do? What are you doing when you come to a stop sign? When you come to a stop sign, what are you doing? You're braking. What are you doing? Recognizing a symbol. What are you doing when you come to a stop sign? You're obeying. What are you doing when you come to a stop sign? You're protecting yourself when you come to a stop sign.
Witnessing truth.
You're witnessing truth. Yes.
Concerned about another possible accident where you may hurt another. So you prevent that by stopping.
You're cooperating.
if you were doing that, we wouldn't have stop signs. What you're doing when you come to a stop sign is you're going, you're driving, you're moving. There's no go sign when you get up in the morning. There's no sign that says, get out of your bed and go. The assumption is you're in motion. The stop sign says, you're not going to be in danger if you cooperate, if you obey, if you take precaution, if you look around the corner. I have asked people that question over and over and over and over again in high school after high school, and no one ever says, when I come to a stop sign, I am driving. And it's important that you understand that what we're asking for today is one for you as an individual, because you are important if you're here. You're important because you have the power to go out and say to someone else, I am not asking you to go out and believe in controlled demolition. I'm not asking you to go out and believe that the forces at the very top of our government had a hand in September 11th. I'm not asking you to believe that the very fabric of the culture and country you love is working against you and slaughtered about 3,000 of our individuals who only went to work that day. Because I will tell you, when I was a kid and I would be in assembly, I had this really horrible problem. I couldn't sing any of, the America songs without crying. I was so infused with whatever this land was under me that I grew up my entire life loving our paradoxes, loving our contradictions, loving even our sins, because here we could talk about them. I knew that just like the stop sign, that's how race functions. What are you doing when you process someone as African American? What are you doing? You're being white. And that part of racism is never defined. That's what I did before. And still, I love this country. And no one will ever be able to call me anything but a patriot. Do you know how hard it is to lose your kid and the entire fabric of goodness that underpinned that country in one fell swoop? I taught people how to erase pathos from the text if you want to make a compelling claim. We need science. We need credibility. So everything that happened to me undermined my ability to really say, I know absolutely what we're here for today. We are here to remember that it was so hard for me, who knew from the beginning, where was NORAD? Why was my kid on a telephone for 5 minutes? That's the fundamental question. Why was the Situation Room advisor in George Bush's motorcade when he walked into a school to read to children between those planes hitting? Why didn't he do anything? I'm not asking you to go out there and gain converts to 9/11 truth. I am asking you to be reasonable, to understand that most people in this country do have some questions. And it's just that small question in each individual mind that is growing in the individual body and soul as our experts are doing separate work for us. We have to support those groups. I never come out and talk about money, but I am going to tell you, please, please, whatever you contribute to all of the good causes, contribute either your time or some money to the 9/11 truth groups. They are doing phenomenal work, bringing people together, networking all over the country to bring just a little bit more each and every day. And I think ultimately, we're going to fail. And I hate to say that, because where we are in this text, and it's interesting, you know, being a former academic, that, you know, proof in the sciences was so key, it was so important. And if science could prove X in the academy, it's done. It's done. And then we knew that that wasn't quite true. Culture's much more powerful than that, because biologists said there's no basis for race. And still, we keep talking about the world in black and white terms. There's no room in our cultural discussion right now for talk about God. I mean, most of us are liberals. And there's a woman out there with blonde hair and long legs and an awfully big mouth who says liberals are godless. Well, I don't believe in God. I know God. I've known God from the time I was a child. And I've known God separate from my parents and separate from any teaching. And I will tell you that the way I know God, I have no responsibility to God to tell you what I know of God. I can't tell you the strange things that have happened to me since September 11th that, okay, all right, I get it. I'm a pragmatist. My feet are on the ground. Whenever people come over to me and say, she's in a better place, you'll see her again someday, my answer to that is, no way. No way. God gave us this. And when I was driving here last night, you know, it was like almost 10 minutes before I arrived. We had not only a beautiful sunset, we had a spectacular sunset. where the fingers of light, and they went from orange on the left to absolutely pure white, fingers of light, spread out. Now, I'm sure there is a scientific explanation for that. But I saw it as the hand of God. And it's not necessary for you to agree with that. It is not necessary for you to agree with that at all. But I will tell you, George Herbert Walker Bush and Dick Cheney have used God, have used 9/11, have used the very fabric of our American lives against us. They are masters at how to use our language and how to use our thinking, and we have to get much better at understanding how our citizens think. Just start with one fundamental question. One fundamental question. We need a criminal investigation into the events of September 11th, 2001. For this reason. The fabric of our country is like the fabric of our flag. And right now, we have had all of our civil liberties removed. And we can't really see that fabric, but I am telling you, we exist as a culture in all of that wonder and glory and all of the drugs of culture that we have been raised on by one thread. They have enormous power, and we have a great job to do in terms of scale. And the only resources we really have right now are reasonable arguments. Go out into the world and be reasonable and just ask the fundamental questions of that day. Thank you.